welcome to Wednesday's edition of Top Story. Thanks for joining us on TV. We are going to tackle a couple of our bigger stories here in Sault Ste. Marie, as we always try to do every morning for you on TV. A couple of things that have come from council and some other issues that have arisen as well. To help us sort of make our way through the murky waters is Matthew Shoemaker, who's Ward 3 representative and is running in the upcoming election as a candidate. Welcome once again. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Thank you.
Good, good. Now, first of all, let's talk about Norgoma, because I mentioned that we're talking about things that have come out of City Council. It's been decided now that Norgoma is to be removed by the spring, but the February 1st deadline is in case somebody in the meantime comes up with an idea as to where to move it?
Yeah, so we've given the board till February 15th to advise the city of a new location so that it can be out by April 15th, I believe it is, or as soon as the ice is gone. The date in between February and April is so that if the board is unable to come up with a solution, the city can then determine what it's going to do in the interim, whether it's going to move it itself, whether it's going to pay to have someone else remove it, where it's going to go. It gives the board an extension of, they were supposed to have it out by August, so it gives them an extension of about 6 months, if my math's right, and then it gives the city itself about 3 months to figure it out if there's no solution found by beginning of February.
So April 15th, I think, is the date, and or whenever the ice is out and they can move it there, the city's moving it. Unless council brings a reconsideration after the election, of course, because there's no more meetings before the election, it'll be moved on April 15th. So some of the people who are on the side of keeping the Norgoma with us are talking about the historical value of the vehicle, of the ship. And we also have heard from people who talk about this past summer and how successful it's been. Apparently we've had like 6,000 people come through. It employed 11 summer students. Is that not a good indication of what could be?
I would say this. I understand the arguments, but it's been there for over 40 years. And any time that there's been discussion of removing it, there's a big, uptick in seeming uptick in activity, I would say, and then things die down in terms of council, and it goes back to the status quo. So we've seen this show before, and they did have 11 summer students. They did paint the ship. But they have known since early this year that we wanted them to remove the ship from the marina as of August 31st. And they have been unable to come up with the amount of money, $20,000, that it would take to do so. So was it reasonable to hire 11 summer students, given they knew they had this expense coming? Was it reasonable to spend whatever amount of money it was on repainting the ship when they knew they had this expense coming?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. So they're spending money in your mind that there isn't going to help anything.
And it's going to fall back on the taxpayer to end up removing it from the marina if they're unable to come up with that money between now and April 15th. So I would say, has it been successful? In some regards, but in others, not so much.
So with regards to your stance on it, you're very vocal about the fact that you think it needs to go. The city obviously thinks it needs to go as well. Is there anything that you can see happening like last minute that would change your mind?
I think I'm happy to have it go wherever, as long as it's not in the Bondar Marina. I think the Bondar Marina is a city marina. We've got a plan to update it with new docks in the spring, and I'd like to see more activity there. I said during the last campaign, I'd love to see a skating rink in that area in the winter when they removed the docks, similar to the Rideau Canal. I'd love to see vendors along there, if there is a skating rink, selling hot chocolate or beaver tails or whatever the case might be. So I think that there needs to be I'd love to see the boardwalk put back in there. There used to be a section of boardwalk right through that marina, and it hasn't been there in probably 6 or 7 years. So I think we need a redevelopment plan for the marina that does not include the Norgoma, because if there is a place for the Norgoma in the city, it's not in the Bondar Marina. It could be elsewhere, but it's not in the Bondar Marina.
Do you think of it as an eyesore?
I think it's looking better than it has in the past. It was certainly an eyesore for a period of time, but this goes back to my earlier point, which is that there's this uptick in activity every now and then, and then things just gradually get worse. And so, I haven't seen the steady type of interest in the ship over the last, years that I've been paying attention, but it's been there for 40 years. And I haven't seen the interest from the community to make it a viable operation.
Now, with regards to moving it, do you have any idea? Have you offered ideas as to where it could possibly be moved to?
There's only a couple places it really can be moved, and I understand the board and the city are trying to figure out if any of those places will take it. By the old General Hospital, there's a dock there. By the Bush Plane, a dock that would need some rehabilitating, but it could work in certain circumstances. Parks Canada has said they don't want it at near the locks. But there are a couple other, we could dry dock it was one of the suggestions that came forward the other day at council. So there are some options. It's a matter of whether or not any of those options are financially viable and whether or not the people who own those portions of the docks, whether it's the city, the federal government, the old, I don't know who owns the one by the old hospital, but whether they would permit the Norgoma to remain there.
You know what, it's interesting that you bring up the point of moving it to just in behind the Bush Plane, because people who want to keep it think of it as an historical piece for our history. It would sort of fit into the historical Bush Plane and then the Ermatinger unit set up there as well. So it would all sort of play into.
Yeah, I think there's some argument that it could work there better than it's working downtown. If you get a critical mass of people right in the area visiting the Bush Plane Museum, visiting the Ermatinger Clerg Museum, you might have them stop in at the Norgoma as well. But obviously where it is now is not attracting that type of membership.
So you said earlier that it was $20,000 to move it?
Correct.
Regardless? So who's going to pay that bill?
Well, it should be the Norgoma's responsibility, but they've already said, the Norgoma board, but they've already said that they don't have the funds to do it. So whether they come up with those funds between now and February remains to be seen. Otherwise, it looks like they'll be coming hat in hand to the city, looking for us to pay to remove it.
And if the city pays to remove it, that obviously goes to the taxpayer.
Correct.
So if the city removes it, are you like breaking it down and getting rid of it totally? Is that in your mind? Is that the best
Well,
solution?
it remains to be seen. I think that'll be determined after February 1st. If they can't find a place to put it, whether it's the old hospital, whether it's the Bush Plane, whether it's Parks Canada, I don't see many other options other than shipping it either out of town or to a place that'll break it down and remove it.
It's interesting because I sort of think if you move it, don't the problems that are current just move with it?
Possibly.